Scottie, hi, it's George Napolitano. Congratulations on 6 years with Wrestling Weekly. I look forward to your posts every week. It's great information, and I will be looking forward to many, many more in the days and months and years to come. Congratulations. Have a great day.
Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to Wrestler Weekly Presents. I'm your host, Scottie Richardson, and my co-host this week,
Mike Leotis.
Man, what a great episode last week, Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, they did the introduction. We've gone past our 5-year anniversary. I'd like to give a happy birthday to my great friend, Austin Idol, the Universal Heartthrob. And, what a great fan he's been. I mean, a friend, really. I mean, we talk every day.
Well, and we talk about a lot, your relationship with Austin Idol, but right. Too, for any of you Phil Singer Games fans, about a week back, Austin did some reveals and a Q&A for the fans of that game. So if you're a Phil Singer Games fan, the Universal Heartthrob is coming to your town. So
That's right. And so this week's episode, we're going to jump right in, is about what are we into right now. And last week we told you, if you watched last week, if you haven't, go to YouTube and you need to subscribe and get that right in your inbox. And follow us on all of our social media accounts at Wrestler Weekly, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Medium for all of our articles, as well as t-shirts, ProWrestlingTees.com. And then check out the book, Family, Bacon, Wrestling. It's over here in the mix somewhere. Amazon. And so I tell you, I did a deep dive into LA wrestling, Southern California, early 1970s, and really specifically right around that 72 to 76 time frame. Rock Rims has been a tremendous resource. Stephen Dubrow, who directed 18th and Grand, the Olympic story of the Olympic Auditorium. That documentary was fantastic. But so I have, but it was all started by an inspiration. And the inspiration, and I tell you, guys, this week, this is the episode. I mean, I know last week was great. I know the other 5 seasons were great, but this one's going to be awesome. But this binder is kind of what I've collected. Anytime I do a deep dive, my wife hates it because the bank accounts, get a little slim there. And my great friend Bill Pavlik, just a shout out to him. Bill is just a great friend of mine. He loves our show, and he loves Japanese magazines right now.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's got a collection that you would not believe of all types of magazines, whether it's the Weston mags, or the Napolitano mags. But shout out to my great friend, Bill Pavlik. But this photo right here, Mike, it's a famous photo. Everyone has seen this one. Most fans have. But if not, this is Greg the Hammer Valentine, circa 1975. And, Greg got his start, started out in many territories. Johnny Fargo there for a little spell. And then
Don Fargo as the fabulous Fargos.
Absolutely. And then went to Florida for a little bit, right? And before that, though, remember, he lived at the house of a great wrestler. The Sheik.
The Sheik.
That's right. Had the ring in the backyard. And but then got a call and went to with Mike LaBelle and those guys over there in Southern California, Hollywood, Los Angeles, Greg Valentine. It's great casting, to send him out there. The son of Johnny Valentine, right? But this photo is iconic.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at this. I mean, you got the bloody head, the belt. And so I was very fascinated by this, Mike, to the point where I was like, man, I got to research this.
Uh-huh. I
started doing really deep dives into this. And what came out of it is, and I left it in the frame, but check this out, Mike. If we can get this and hope that the glare, I don't know if we can see us, but this is a graphic, but this is the program that Greg Valentine defeated Eduardo Carpentier.
Yes, Carpentier.
Yeah, and so for the America's title, the NWA America's title, and that is a graphic that I've got an article coming out that should be out soon. It should be out this week. But that's Greg Valentine. And shout out to a great graphic designer, goes by Wrestlers, with a couple different hyphens there on Instagram, from India. And he did this graphic for me. I took an image out of my head and I said, can you take that image that's iconic? Can you take this photo from a Mid-Atlantic mag and can you try to get Rockford Files and get Jim Rockford's car in there? In 1975, he did it all and it was perfect. But if you can't see, let's see it, get a little bit closer. There's a couple articles here these are original newspaper clippings of Greg Valentine when he wins the belt. And he was two-time America's champion. This is the actual program, Valentine's Night, signed when he beat Carpentier. And then he also defeated John Tolos.
The great Golden Greek John Tolos.
What do you think about that, Mike?
Well, this is great because you see Greg Valentine younger, and maybe a lot of the younger fans might have known him from WWE or WCW. But Greg Valentine, and a lot of our fans know him from Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, but that was not the beginning. Greg Valentine had a historic career. Not only the guy who broke Wahoo's leg and had the stones to wear a shirt that said so.
That's right.
But in this tremendous Los Angeles territory, which you saw a lot of coverage on in the magazines, the old LA Battle Royal, the Grand Olympic Auditorium, who you can follow too on Twitter as well. Absolutely. The Grand Olympic, they have their own Twitter page. But this shows how good Greg Valentine was young, how difficult it can be to have a father in the business of professional wrestling, and you carry that name.
Right.
There's a lot of pressure. So Greg lived up to it. One of the things I want to point out in here, Scotty, is that America's belt.
That's right.
Because this is a rare belt, a rare photo of the belt.
Right.
And there's photos out there, but this is probably the clearest photo I've seen of the belt.
Right. And Greg, that was Greg's first title.
Yeah.
That was his first title championship belt. Yeah. And so that being said, Mike, I had a very good friend of mine who was able to replicate. And so now I have my own NWA America's title with Greg Valentine on there. I mean, what do you think, Mike?
I mean, the nameplate, it is tremendous. And these Molka-style belts made by Nikita Molkovich were very popular in the 1970s. It was a big upgrade from the smaller belts, which were still very nice. But these were kind of the first of the bigger wrestling belts that you started to see, which by today's standards, this is a small belt.
Right.
But just, again, you can see the 3 plates on each side. And the main plate here. And again, if you take a look here, it's got the nameplate that says Greg Valentine on it. So for you fans out there, this is a historic belt, a rare belt. And really proud that, Scottie was able to get this into the collection.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to put it on your side there?
There you go. Yeah.
So with that, I started putting a binder together and really, was able to come across some great friends that have helped me. One in particular is Sean, and Sean is a lifelong LA fan. He went to the matches, and look at this, Mike. I mean, these are the actual newspaper clippings, the cards, the different things. It's just tremendous, and the history here to be able to dig and deep dive in. And, we're going to talk about it. But as I go through just some of these that we're going to pull out for you, how about this one? California's official wrestling magazine, The Life of a Wrestling Doctor. Look at this one. Rocky Johnson. Just tremendous.
And again, you see so many different stars who've been through a territory. And when you do a deep dive like that, I didn't know these two guys wrestled. You'll know so many guys held that America's title, right? Ernie Ladd, Terry Funk, Pork Chop Cash.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So many tremendous wrestlers through that territory.
So speaking of Pork Chop, now this is an original Friday, April 19th. And it's Pork Chop Cash. And you can see this. He's going to wrestle the Butcher Brannigan. One fall for 1 hour.
Yes.
So another great shot of Pork Chop with the belt. You look at the other ones here, and these programs were newspapers.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the newspaper, like a newspaper feel. Pork Chop versus Maniac Tolis. And this one is the one that Pork Chop actually won the belt. He defeats Tolis in 1974, March 22nd. The actual program, and I like how it's what we call game used. And let me just stop it. We actually have come up with terms.
Yes.
We talk about signed copies versus clean copies. Yeah. When Wrestler Weekly talks about clean copies of a magazine, that just means it's not autographed. When we talk about game used programs, game used is when someone, as you can see here, held this in their hands. They bought it at the arena. They watched the matches, whether in a high school gym or wherever it might be in the Olympic, and they circled or they wrote in it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like that, but that's the gold.
That was just like scoring a baseball game.
Correct.
Another thing that I want to point out on this back cover here is you see Andre the Giant appearing. I'll move that closer here for you. But he's facing in a handicap match Black Gordman and the Great Goliath on one of the first ever Coliseum videos released by the WWF in the 80s. That particular match was featured in the Andre the Giant video cassette.
Wow. Now, here's a great one. When you had Terry Funk, who was the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, wrestling the America's Champion in Chavo Guerrero. Yeah. And I actually not only have the program here, but I was able to obtain the actual newspaper clipping of the outcome and results. Also the preview. Yeah. And so that's another tremendous. And Terry Funk, the NWA World's Champion, traveled.
Yeah,
that's another thing that people sometimes get lost. Like, well, was he in that territory? Well, actually, he was in there all of them.
All the territories. I mean, the NWA champion was wrestling 300 to 330 nights a year.
Yeah.
Now,
here's a magazine that a lot of people did not know that Ernie the Cat Ladd was actually wearing the America's title. But that is the belt that he has in this classic magazine that we've seen for many years around. And that being said, July 28, 1972, the champion is John Tolis, the Golden Greek, right?
Yeah.
Against the challenger from Houston, Texas. Check out this program, Ernie Ladd, and this is Ernie's. Now, Ernie was a 3-time champion of the America's title, and this is one of the title change programs. And this was a little bit harder card stock than some of the other ones. January 12th, 1973, and Superstar Billy Graham is on this card.
So, and not only that, we talk about the significance of the America's title. It was the top title in the territory. If you were the America's champion, you were the number one man. It's no different today than how each of the wrestling territories has their own world champion.
Right.
That's the top title in the territory. So if you were the America's champion, you were not only the number one man in that territory, but in that territory in the world title rankings, that automatically made you number one contender.
Absolutely. Now let's go to another wrestler who held the belt, which is Victor Rivera. And I love these names that we don't really associate. We don't talk about them enough. But check this cover. You talk about bloody covers with the America's title. I love it because it's around the waist.
Yeah, yes, it is.
It's like art. This is what I pick up on it. He's hurting. It's right after the match. You got the microphone right in his face. You got the doctor there. And the belt's around the waist.
Yeah. That's how important it was.
Well, another shot. This is from a magazine with Strongbow on it, Wrestling News. But check this one out. Again, this is one of those things that little known, especially me on the East Coast.
Yeah.
We didn't really get a lot of that unless it was in the mags, and certainly in this time frame. I was very young. I mean, I was born in 1972, so talking about 73. I don't remember that. I was 1 year old. So, another pork chop cash, and this is Ernie Ladd winning another one of his America's titles when he defeated Pork Chop. And then Tolo, talk about John.
John Tolos, who is very famous for his feud with Freddie Blassie, both before they were managers. If you remember, John Tolos had a run as the coach, managing Kurt Hennig in the WWE, and Freddie Blassie later became a manager. But these guys were vicious rule breakers, and some incredibly bloody matches, but matches that were full of passion, and you could feel the hatred between these two men. So John Tolos, an unsung hero.
November 21st, 1975, Terry Funk, Chavo Guerrero. Chavo's the America's champion this time around. Terry Funk. And then what's an interesting one is last week, Mike, when I previewed this, little known fact is, if I'll zoom that in there, it's Terry Funk wearing what belt, Mike?
The America's Heavyweight Championship.
Only photo I've ever seen.
Yeah.
With Terry Funk with that belt.
Yeah. And so you talk about those rare pieces. You take a look back, right? Terry Funk wins the United States title in Mid-Atlantic later.
Yeah.
There's a photo of him which now has been identified and thought to be a WWF tag team belt.
Correct.
But there is no photo of Terry Funk with that red U.S. title belt.
Right.
But he was the champion. So photos like that, when you come across something like that, that's like, that's like winning the lottery.
Yeah. And then now this is one where Terry Funk this is a very rare one in my collection, is Terry Funk as the America's champion in a program and against Victor Rivera. And Victor goes over, we see here, 1 fall, 1 hour, July 27th, and he scores it. Just a great battle for the America's title. And then going back to my good buddy Sean with the newspaper clippings, and you see here America's Championship, Terry Funk, Chavo Guerrero. We just showed the program a little while ago. This is the actual newspaper clipping, and the same thing here. We showed it a little while ago, but when Terry Funk was the world's champion now against Chavo Guerrero, here's an actual original newspaper clipping, and many articles that came out of this collection, which is just great, because you have the magazines, but now to get the newspaper, now you're getting that other perspective, kind of a newspaper sports beat writer, like the old days in sports, which is another great one. And so, that's kind of where I'm at. And one guy we didn't mention, let's mention him now, Mike. This guy was tremendous in L.A.
Yeah.
And this is Mill with the America's title on this one. This is from the Olympic, and this one is from 1980, a little bit later. Tom Pritchard's on this card, Al Madrill, how great was he? And then one more, Mike, before I just remembered, we have a rare one that you and I discovered in my collection that I didn't even know about, because that happens quite often. Let's see if we got it here. And of course, when I need it, I can't find it. But here's Dory Funk. He was big down in the Southern. Here we go. What can you tell the fans about this one?
So this here is Leroy Brown. Real name was Ray Candy. You might remember him from the Zambui Express in the 80s in Florida and Memphis. But Ray Candy here is as Leroy Brown. This is the program from the night he won, or celebrating. This was the first program after he won the America's Heavyweight title.
1979.
So, for those of you who might remember him as a tag team wrestler, he was also a very proficient singles wrestler as well for a time there, Ray Candy.
So that's kind of what I've been in. And Mike, let me see that belt again.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna do the old shoulder.
There you go. That's the way to do it.
I'm gonna do the old shoulder break here. while you talk about what you've been into lately.
So we're going to move a little bit up the coast here, up the Pacific coast, into the Pacific Northwest. So shout out to a wonderful YouTube channel I discovered, which many wrestling fans have seen over the years, called Testosterone Overload. And they're like the unofficial history of Portland wrestling. And Portland wrestling was one of those territories where you would see Northwest listed on the rankings page in the magazines once they moved to the territorial rankings. And you would see names like Jesse Ventura. You'd see names like Jimmy Snuka. You'd see names like Mean Mike Miller, right? Ed Wiskowski, Kendo Nagasaki, Billy Jack Haynes.
Absolutely.
The Grappler, so many guys. But one of the guys that has really stood out to me, we have a wonderful program here. This is from December 1982. This, I believe, is from Toronto, the Stranglehold program. And it's Bob Backlund defending the championship in a Texas death match against the Playboy, Buddy Rose. Those of you might remember, Playboy Buddy Rose was in a tag team, very successful tag team, AWA World Tag Team Champion with Pretty Boy Doug Summers, managed by Sherry Martel. They had a tremendous feud with the Midnight Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. But Playboy Buddy Rose, and here's the thing that stands out to me about Buddy Rose. Not only was he a world title contender, the territories were generally booked around your top babyface.
Right.
Where in Portland, it was booked around the top heel. And that was Playboy Buddy Rose. And many people came into the territory to try to stop Buddy Rose and his tag team partner, Ed Wiskowski's reign of terror. They were injuring people left and right, crippling people, as they said. You had guys like Lord Jonathan Boyd. You had Dutch Savage, Stan the Man Stasiak, Hector Guerrero, George Wells, Adrian Adonis, Rotten Ron Starr. They all fell at the hands of Rose and Wiskowski. And then one man who came through, who was also injured by Rose and Wiskowski. Here's a tremendous program featuring him. Only photo I know of this man with the 10 pounds of gold.
Absolutely.
This is the Grapevine, but it is Jay Youngblood, the late Jay Youngblood here, with a program where he has pinned Ric Flair. There you see the photo of him. We'll bring that a little bit closer, of him with the 10 pounds of gold. He did not win it on that occasion. It was one of those finishes where he should have won, and to build up another match to be C.J. Youngblood as a viable contender for the world title.
And he was great in Portland.
He was great in Portland, had a great singles run, feuded with Buddy Rose and Ed Wiskowski. They ended up injuring Jay Youngblood and putting him on the shelf, but I believe that was because Jay was going to head back to the Mid-Atlantic, where, again, you guys have seen his tremendous work with Ricky Steamboat as a tag team, and later on tagging with his brothers.
Right.
But, and a shout out to Jay's daughter, Rika, who is on Twitter. Tremendous person, always willing to talk Jay Youngblood and wrestling. Just a great friend of ours, and somebody that we really appreciate. But Jay Youngblood was one of the baby faces that came in to try to fight off the very dangerous Rose and Wiskowski. But Killer Tim Brooks was next on the list to get injured. But Killer Tim Brooks didn't come alone to Portland. Killer Tim Brooks had an injury, and then his tag team partner came to his defense. He came, as they say, to kick ass and chew bubblegum. His name from this Mid-Atlantic wrestling program is Rowdy Roddy Piper.
And what's my daughter's name?
Piper.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my. How did that happen?
How did that work out?
Roddy Piper comes into the territory and initially came in as a heel. But Piper got so over, he didn't change his character.
No.
Piper didn't change and start doing babyface things and kissing babies and all that stuff. He had, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
And how great was he in L.A. as the America's champion?
Yeah, right. You might remember him, too, as the masked Canadian in there.
Absolutely.
Roddy Piper in L.A., classic feud with Chavo Guerrero, gets his head shaved.
Feud. Classic.
And also, too, he's a former America's champion himself, Roddy Piper.
Yes.
and created one of the belts that we saw earlier, not this belt, but another version that had an eagle as part of the center plate. Roddy Piper made a plaid covering for the belt to match his kilt.
Yeah.
But Roddy Piper comes to town and puts a hurting on Buddy Rose and Ed Wiskowski. In fact, injures Ed Wiskowski and puts him out of action. That Buddy Rose had to find a replacement partner, the great Rip Rogers.
Yes.
But you see here Roddy Piper, this wonderful cover here, the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Program. You guys know about Roddy Piper being a U.S. champion in the Mid-Atlantic here. But here with the bagpipes, during this feud, Rose actually steals Piper's bagpipes. And it's a little thing like that that builds to something bigger. And these matches were white hot. The crowd at the old Portland Sports Arena, which was a renovated bowling alley. It's still standing, but it's now a church on North Chautauqua in Portland, Oregon. But just tremendous stuff. If you've not seen Roddy Piper and Buddy Rose, and Buddy Rose could work. He might not have looked like the athlete of the day, as Dusty Rhodes had said later on, right? But man, he could go, and you are missing out if you don't check this out. But check out the Piper and Rose feud. This was actually the feud that got Jim Valley, the great Jim Valley, who we send our best wishes to. Jim's doing really, really well health-wise. But this was the feud that got him into wrestling.
Yeah, and Buddy Rose, Bob Backlund, those I mean, there's just so many different classic when you talk about where these guys would thread their needle through
and
the
make
different territories. Unbelievable.
Well, and another great picture we have, and this previews, for those of you Von Erich fans out there, we are going to have a Kerry Von Erich episode later this season that we think you guys will really like. But the reason why we bring up the Von Erichs, because this is a Buddy Rose is the answer to a trivia question. Who in 1976 did Kevin Von Erich have his very first match against? And that would be here. This is a photo from his first ever wrestling match. See here, Kevin Von Erich, and he's got the armbar on Playboy Buddy Rose, who was billed this night under his real name, Paul Pershman. And an interesting fact on this, Scotty, is the opponent that night was to be Rick Martel.
Wow.
Rick Martel could not make the show, and so Buddy Rose was put in his place.
And Kevin Von Erich actually sent me this photo.
Kevin, who was on Twitter, he hasn't been on in recent months, but you can interact with his sons, Ross and Marshall, who, as you might know, are big stars in Major League Wrestling right now. But Kevin's always been a generous and kind guy to us, and was kind enough to send this photo. Kevin's living life now in Hawaii and enjoying retirement and his many grandkids. But this is a great piece of history. This match is actually available on YouTube as well. You could look this up, and you'll see Kevin Von Erich wearing boots, which he wore for the first few years of his career. But he said he wrestled barefoot once, and that was it. He never wanted to go back to boots again. But just a great photo here. And this was, again, like you said, these guys who threaded the needle into all these territories. I've become a very big Buddy Rose fan over the last couple of years.
Right.
Again, the beauty of the magazines where you read about these guys, but the great thing about the era we live in now is all the digitized footage that we can have. The DVDs, from Rock Rims with the Los Angeles wrestling. Yeah. It's tremendous. There's San Francisco wrestling, which we're going to cover a little bit later in this season with a very special piece of memorabilia. But these were the things that now you could expand your learning, expand and see different kinds of wrestling. Each territory had its own flavor, its own different style of pro wrestling. And no matter what you like or don't like, there's something out there for you, the wrestling fan. So, yeah, you might have a home territory. Mid-Atlantic was yours, right? WWF and Jim Crockett was for me. But seeing these guys, seeing world-class wrestling, Southwest Championship Wrestling, Los Angeles Wrestling, and now Portland Wrestling, no matter what you're into, there's so many classics out there. Don't miss out. You're going to want to see it. Hop on that YouTube, get some DVDs, and celebrate professional wrestling.
Yeah, one of the saddest things that I come across in the IWC community, That's internet wrestling community. But fans that only know of Greg Valentine or Roddy Piper in the WWE.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, but man, get back to the roots. Greg Valentine, LA Wrestling, Roddy Piper, Portland. That's the roots. That's the start. That's when it really got hot. And then, boom, the rest is history from Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah.
Because then you had the dog collar match.
Yes.
Right? It's where those two culminated and moved on to greener pastures. But just tremendous. Thanks, Mike, for going through that with us. And thanks, Kevin, for sending us this photo along to show for our fans and friends and followers. But next week, Mike, I believe that you're going to take the show here. Mike Leotis is going to be hosting next week, and so you don't want to miss that. He's got some unboxing. He's been waiting. He's been waiting patiently for a shipment to come in. But I believe your train is going to come in next week, Mike. And I will say for Reggie, who's on assignment in Rhode Island, and Mike Leotis, my co-host this season, here's season 6. Fans, don't forget to find us on social media at Wrestler Weekly, ProWrestlingTees.com for the t-shirts, Amazon for our book, Family Bacon Wrestling, and subscribe on YouTube. But until next week, fans, so long for now.